Are you a LatinX founder seeking to expand your innovative tech business in the US and global economies? Our guest is a beloved Boston angel investor and tech founder who took his passion for Latinx tech founders and turned it into action, and is now impacting the world with his funds and his program. It's Fab Founder Friday on the Startup Life Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startup Life Show. I'm your host, Ande Lyons, startup coach to first-time founders. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, I now help newly minted business owners sleep through the night by giving them peace of mind. Because look, a new business does not come with instructions. Oh, that it did, but it doesn't. And founders need help and support along the way, especially first-time founders. Thank you for carving out time and tuning into the show. For those of you watching the replay, would you be willing to click that subscribe button and the little bell icon? I'd be so grateful to have you as a subscriber to my YouTube channel. I am so excited to introduce you to a Boston startup community treasure, Oliver Sanchez. He's an angel investor and tech founder, and he's so passionate, as I said earlier, about helping Latinx startups expand their businesses in the US and globally. And he does that in several ways. As managing partner of AccelHUB, let me just pull that logo up for you there. Look at that. Be sure to go visit that website, okay? Of AccelHUB and AccelHUB Venture Partners, Oliver took his passion and turned it into action. AccelHUB supports technology entrepreneurs from Latin America looking to scale their company in the US through resources and capital. And AccelHUB Venture Partners is an angel investment group that invests seed capital in technology ventures from Latin America with demonstrated growth and US market potential. And that's not all, folks. Check out this. Oliver is also co-founder and CEO of Extrasense Technologies, a software company that leverages artificial intelligence to identify pests and is the leading image recognition platform for the pest control industry. I got to tell you, I am so excited to hear Oliver's startup stories, his advice for Latinx innovators, and for those of us who would like to raise capital. I know he's going to have some great advice for all of us. Let's give a hearty Startup Life community welcome to the one and only Oliver Sanchez. My little clapping there, Oliver. How are you today?
Good, thank you, Ande. Thanks for having me here. Very excited to be here finally.
Oh, well, listen, I'm going to just pull up a little stroll down memory lane, everybody. Ah, look at that. That's Oliver and I met at this wonderful event at the Cambridge Innovation Center's Venture Cafe. And it was a wonderful time. And he was talking and sharing such great advice. I immediately became a fan. And I know you guys will become a fan if you don't already know him and aren't already a fan. So, Oliver, where are you hailing from?
So I'm originally from Mexico. I was born in Mexico City, but I live now in Watertown.
Okay.
Cambridge.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Boston, outside of Boston, a town called Andover, which it has an R at the end, which I love because then I can say Andover with my Boston accent. It's so good. Right. Anyway, we've got a few folks tuning in today. Hey, Natalia. Hey, Natalia, let everybody know where you're hailing from, okay? I love to hear that because I know Oliver, Natalia just graduated from Hult School of Business MBA program. And she was an intern with me for a little while. It was so wonderful. And then I know from Texas, we have an Internet of Things phenomenal female founder right here, Kirsten Hancock. Hi. And then, oh my gosh, Angela Sanchez. Okay, so Oliver, this woman has an amazing jewelry business called Artifactos. And Artifactos has Colombian women pull together the most beautiful beads. They're from, vegetable nuts or coffee beans or rinds, orange and lemon rinds. So it helps the planet. It helps the economy in Colombia. and the jewelry is amazing. So I just had to give that shout out, Angie. And she's often doing other wonderful things as well. So wonderful. And hey, LinkedIn user, sometimes we don't get the face captured here. So please be sure to say hi with your name and where you're hailing from. Would love to see, who that is. Oh, good, Natalia, you're still here in Boston. Yay. Okay. And you're welcome. So it's so much fun to say hi to folks. This is the beauty of the live show, Oliver, is just to be able to do that. And also remember, viewers, there's no other opportunity for networking, really, other than these type of live stream shows or, Zoom webinars. So bring your business card. That's your LinkedIn URL. Share it in the comments with others. If you have a business, I please beg you, put your business name and your URL. I'm going to put it right up here on the screen so folks can see that. Yay. And yes, hi, Alejandra, tuning in from LA. Oh, that's wonderful.
Hey,
so good to
West Coast.
Yes, that's wonderful. And then, yes, Alex Silva, that's you. Yay.
Hey.
I met Alex a few years ago with Michael Sheehan. It was wonderful. And then, of course, the woman who provides all my wonderful graphics, Oliver, it's Nikki Pasquier.
Oh, fantastic.
And she's hailing from England, the beautiful Cotswolds area, and she takes really good care. If you need help with any design work for live stream shows, Nikki is your gal. She's a Canva expert. All right, so happy to welcome everybody to the show today. Here's where we're going to dive in right away with you, my wonderful Oliver, which is, when did you know entrepreneurship was for you? What called you to leave that paycheck behind and venture out into the world and put up a shingle? Share with folks your startup story.
Well, great. Thanks, Andy. So, I think for me, it started with my, I guess most people, with my parents or my family. My dad is a doctor, and I still remember the day where in doctors in Mexico, they have usually two options, or they had two options before. They could either work for the state-run hospital network, or they can be independent. And obviously, working for a state is, you have a guaranteed paycheck, and there's security and safety, and you can retire. Albeit the cap is quite minimum. Or you can take the risk and go out on your own. And I still remember the day where my dad took that risk and decided to leave that safety net. And it was stressful for several months for the whole family, but it really paid off. And he's been doing private practice ever since. And it always stuck with me that you have to take this risk sometimes to do what you love.
Well, I love that you had such a role model too.
Yeah.
Many of us don't have that. And so it's almost inconceivable. The pathway in life is to get a job and either stay or bounce around, but you're working for someone and you're building up your career. Where along in your life did you say, okay, Dad did it. I saw the risk he went through, and I think I have an appetite for that too. Because folks, you do have to have an appetite for this life.
It is. That's a right word. You have to have the appetite, and you don't know what it is until you're going through it, and it has been tough, and I love talking about that.
Yeah. So when did the spark hit you and light up your eyes?
But you know what? So I graduated undergrad in 2001, and this was right after the .com bust, and so I had been seeing, leading up to 2001, people becoming extremely wealthy. I remember clearly we were in a cab with my brother in New York, and the cab driver was telling us that he was going to stop driving a cab because he was investing in AOL stock, day trading in and out, and he was making more money doing that than the cab driver. And I was like, something's wrong, something's going on here. And fair enough, the next year, everything exploded.
Well, and I can speak a little bit to that too, Oliver. I had a .com. And,
there it is.
Over 8 million in VC money into the .com. And we were really cranking. And I laugh to this day about the stock option negotiations I would have with 22-year-olds and 25-year-olds, because from 96, 97, 98, right? That's all everybody saw were young people cashing out. The only problem is that none of them really diversified. They held on to the stock, so they lost it all. But, it was a crazy time. And people here remember the stadium, filled with their money because of a big conglomerate.com business here in the Boston area that built everything up and then plummeted down. So I understand that feeling. So what happened after listening to?
Yeah, I'm going through this bubble, and so my senior year. So this is back in 01. I think there's maybe one accelerator in the whole U.S. I mean, this was all very new to everybody. There was really no pitch competitions, none of this that you have now. I do remember. So I went to UMass Amherst as undergrad. I remember there was one pitch event in the whole school, and back then I had this idea that I should have, it was kind of one of the first lessons in entrepreneurship. I was like, I really think there's an opportunity here to fund capital expense projects or capital projects for Latin countries, because what I saw, what I was really quickly to understand is that, and this kind of guided what my passion was for the next 10, 20 years, is that there are a lot of resources in certain countries, monetary, knowledge, access to certain type of technology, and there's very few resources in other countries, but there's a lot of talent, right? So if there was a way in the perfect world, in my mind, where you can transfer those resources from the people that have a lot of resources to people that need a lot of resources, you could really, get everybody to, people that have less resources and kind of live behind, the economy is lagging. You can really get them up to speed, I guess, in
Right.
the playing field. So it's always kind of in the back of my mind. And so that was my first idea. This is back then when crowdfunding didn't exist. And I remember we get with the pitch. I made it to the final three, and I'm talking to the investor at that point. I can't even remember the investor's name, but he said, this is a great idea, but it wouldn't work because the regulations, you would have to create a fund, and you have to go through the SEC. They're very complicated. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I gave up that idea, got a job at EMC right after that. But it always stuck with me. How do I make this happen? Of course, had I stuck with that, that would have been probably the first crowdfunding site.
Right. And the person was right. I mean, the Job Acts didn't happen until 2012. So you were way ahead of your time. And that's the legal policy that happened, allowing crowdfunding sites to happen, and then equity, or we call regulation, crowdfunding sites happen, where you do have to be under the umbrella of something that is legally approved by the SEC. But you are an innovator, forward-thinking guy. So you went to...
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I mean, that kind of that was my first lesson, I think, in entrepreneurship. And that's something that stuck with me ever since, is you cannot give up early just because one person says no, right? And unfortunately, I never had, I had a role model from my dad. I didn't have a role model from the venture side or the tech side. Right now you hear, there's so many blogs that tell you, oh, you're going to hear 100 no's. You're going to get, everybody, you get 99 no's before you get to one yes in the investor side. I never knew that was the case. I thought at that point that if somebody who knew better or had more money than me said no, that the idea was bad. Thankfully now for entrepreneurs, there's a lot more knowledge out there, and a lot of people are going to say no to your idea, and that's okay.
That's right. Especially if you don't have the look and feel that traditional venture capital and angel investors are looking for. And that's true till this day.
Yep.
But we have a lot more support. And it started around 2008, viewers, where we started to see accelerator programs happen and started to really put money into the startup community. Here in Boston, our governor at the time, Deval Patrick, set up a council to turn our community into the startup hub that it is today, to bring the right folks in and to have the support from Mass Challenge and other organizations to help entrepreneurs get the training they need, the introductions they need, and a foot up, right? A leg up.
Leg up. Yeah, and you're right. And so, you didn't have this back then. So you were really, I think, left to your own device in a lot of ways, and left to your own conviction. So, it's very easy to kind of just, take I would say, the more traditional route of get a job.
Yeah. And so you went with a great company, EMC, just really well known, a great company to grow in. But I'm thinking you also needed to start building awareness and your reputation and your own personal brand and professional brand in the community. How did that start for you? And how did you end up getting involved as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so that's a great point. So, I still had this idea of this resource transfer across the different countries. I started back probably 2 or 3 years out of college, website design firm. But the idea, this is back then when people still pay for website design. They don't do that anymore. But the idea was to set up the design, so the actual designers, the people that program HTML and at that point Java, JavaScript, were actually in Mexico. I made a contact with a professor, a CS professor in Mexico, in Tec de Monterrey, and so we were I was doing the business development, selling the websites, and then he would create them with his staff down there. So that worked. In theory, it would work well, but I guess this is 2004, 2005. The only thing we had to collaborate was Skype, and Skype was horrible back then. I mean, we had no sharing tools, no Google Drive. You had to send huge drives and images across, email. It was horrible. So, we tried it. We sold a couple websites. The margins were fantastic for us, but it was so hard to collaborate that we kind of had to give it up.
There was no Slack channel back in those days.
No Slack, no WhatsApp, no Trello, no shared drives, no Dropbox.
Yeah,
really like.
And this is why, folks, you're always hearing the fact that timing is everything. And I always use Airbnb as an example. If our economy hadn't collapsed, no way would you let a stranger into your home. All of a sudden, though, you're out of money. You're like, oh, come on in. I got an extra room.
Yep.
Yep. Timing is so hard. Oliver, I had a founder on a few months ago who had a business that was ready to track people when they ran. So this was like 2002 with the phone. But the phone companies did not turn on. They had the capabilities, Nokia, Motorola, everybody, the capability to turn on the GPS, but they didn't. He had to wait until they turned it on so that he could then have something that people were doing. It seems like inconceivable that you couldn't track your running today, but nobody could do that until phones turned on. So it's timing. So you struggled through, you got all of that, and then what happened?
So that's a second lesson. Timing is everything. That's correct. We closed that business down. We realized that wasn't going to be. It was probably the wrong time. We didn't have the right tools to do this. I really decided to focus more on my corporate career for the next 5-6 years. That was still obviously like any entrepreneur. That's still in the back of your head. You still want to do it. There's something that makes you not happy about working for somebody else and working for a specific job. So my first step into what I'm doing now was I decided to start looking for companies to invest from. I had some a pretty good income, and so from the income I had some money just as an angel investor. So what I did, without knowing anything about angel investing at all, I decided to start looking at platforms, these crowdfunding platforms in Latin America, and looking for. What I like about the crowdfunding platforms is that broke out the deal, what they were looking for, who they are. They give you a little bio, who the entrepreneur was, and give you some of the financials and stuff forth. So I could quickly go through a lot of these companies, and I decided to put some money into 2 companies. One of the companies, the entrepreneur, she needed more than money. She needed help bringing her product here, and I can share with you the website if you like, but. She basically created products for pets, and she had done everything herself with all her own money. Fantastic branding, everything looked so professional. I was like, this is awesome. I want to help her. So I invested a little money, helped her bring all the stuff here, and that's what I learned. My third lesson in entrepreneurship, and I guess my first lesson in angel investing is, products are hard. Real, whether it's consumer products or hardware products. It's hard to scale that because you need warehousing, you need importing, you need materials, you need suppliers. There's a whole additional complexity that comes with products versus software.
That's the truth. I had a food manufacturing business. I mean, the product just understanding, getting to the right pricing and the profitability, having the right margins, getting all the parts and pieces working. What happens when manufacturing shuts down, things don't work, they can't get parts and pieces. It's really difficult. And of course,
difficult.
Add a shelf life to it and forget it. So I'm always saying, as God is my witness, I'll never do a product with a shelf life again.
I believe it, because I mean, you're right. I mean, we were lucky that these were leather products, and they survived in the storage for like over a year while we figured everything out. But one of the things, when I think that finding the hardest things from a product perspective is consumers want to, especially now, want to buy stories. They want to buy experiences. They don't necessarily want to buy a product. So if you can't tell that story or that experience before on your website, on your communications, on your social media, people are not going to buy your product. And that is a talent that I don't particularly have, and the very few people have that do it very well. But if you do it very, very well, of course, there's a lot of fantastic brands out there that have fantastic stories and are very successful. But that's a skill set that you need to have.
I love that. Whew. Yeah. 3 great lessons so far from Oliver Sanchez. I just want to say hi to Theodore. Hi, Ted. Thanks for tuning in from Phoenix. Oh, I'm so glad you know some entrepreneurs there in Arizona. One of them is from Colombia. Well, connect with Angela. And then Marielle Artistry. Okay, so Oliver, Marielle has a makeup business, hair and makeup business, and she gets the stars who come here to shoot film. She gets the large corporate, the brand names, whether it's Mr. Kraft to folks. She gets them looking phenomenal, and she helps wedding brides, the whole 9 yards. So she has a business with amazing makeup artists. Going to do a shout out to Marielle O'Rourke. And yes, I love you too, Marielle. And then, yes, and I hear you, Angela. When you're raising money and you're trying to get your business up and running, it can be very, very difficult for a Latina entrepreneur. I mean, it's a double whammy. You're a woman and a Latina. Terrible. And I've been a fan of Kirsten. Kirsten, how long have we known each other? Like 5 or 6 years now. They came out with a Internet of Things product, initially in the UK. Now they're in Texas. And she knows all about what it's like to bring that product to market. Put your website in the link in the comment threads, Kirsten. I'll bring it up. Okay. So you're still employed though, right? At this point?
Still employed, doing this on the side. So from that final experience, bringing the center, helping, investing in this entrepreneur, helping her come here to the U.S., bring her product here to the U.S., this is where I realized that's where my that's where I wanted to play. That's where my passion lied. And I thought that that's something I could do.
Yeah.
Because being born in Mexico, but also going to school here, I went to an American school in Mexico. I went to college here, high school here, and obviously stayed here after that. I felt like I was multiculturally fluent. So it's different to being fluent in a language, which a lot of people are, but understanding both cultures is harder because you really have to be in both places for a long time and understand the idiosyncrasies of both places. And how did that, people might think that's not a big deal, but it does affect the way you do business, you interact. It affects the way you raise money, affects the way you present your company. There's a lot of things that your culture kind of expresses itself. There's different ways that your culture expresses itself in the way you do things. And some things are better, some things are worse. I don't think maybe better or worse is not the right thing. Is something's fit in the culture here in the U.S. It's something
right. So you're able to easily discern. Now you're able to connect dots. And so when you went to advise folks on bringing products here, I imagine now you were able to also prepare them for the cultural change as a founder and a CEO.
Correct. And I started going to all these events because I was more interested in meeting more founders, and I met a lot of LATAM founders or Latinx founders that were, I remember the story pretty vividly. There was this Colombian startup who I met, one of the founders who was here. They were in their second year. They're just doing their first sales here, and they had just raised an early round. But he told me the first whole year he was here, he had no idea where to go. He found the venture cafe by chance. He was talking to some people that wouldn't return their phone calls or their emails. And he's basically spent 8-9 months in the US trying to figure out just culturally what to do, and then like any good entrepreneur, they figure it out. But for an entrepreneur, 8-9 months, it's could be life or death. Luckily their startup in Colombia was very successful and they had revenue, so they could afford it. But a lot of companies cannot afford that, and
Right.
so I realized there that there was an opportunity to help founders from Latin America, help them shorten that time. They figure it out. Instead of 8 months, we could do it in 1 month, and instead of them having to knock on doors, we could introduce them for them, and that's where
Love
AccelHUB
that.
was born.
Yeah.
And so that's where what I did is to take the step from working for somebody is I decided to open a co-working space in Cambridge, a small co-working space focusing on my idea was to be like a landing place for this Latin American founders. So all be in one spot. We'll all help each other. We'll all learn together. And at first I'm like, I could do this half time. I could do it after work. So I put some money. I invest some money. I had another co-founder for that. A couple co-founders. The landlord was excited about it, so he joined as well. So
Yay.
we got this group, and we're excited. And very quickly you realize that you cannot do this part time. You kind of have to jump all in. So we're 3 months into it, and we had very few people come in because I was doing this like after work.
Right. So
just didn't work.
it wasn't gonna be the vision that you had.
Correct. So I decided to take the jump, take the plunge, and thanks to my wife that she was able to say, yeah, I agree to that. That's the other thing I'll say is it's very tough to just do it. If you're single, that's a different thing. But if you have, your wife or or family that are depending on you, you need to have their blessing in a way. You need to have them back you up. Otherwise, it's very, very hard to do.
That is so important. And everybody tuning in, tuned into the show before, I always talk about that. Have the tough conversation with your beloved, because if they're not on board, it's going to make it very difficult for you. And, you can plan it out in terms of years. I'm pursuing this dream. Let's give it a good 24-month, 36-month runway. And they're buying in so that they can help manage watching you go through the ups and downs and the roller coaster ride, because there's no guarantee it's going to work.
Yeah.
You're going to work really hard to make sure it comes out the way you want it and you have the results you want, but there is no guarantee, like a paycheck. Well, that's not always a guarantee either. But so I love that you had not only the conversation with your wife, Oliver, but that she also gave you her blessing. That is very wise advice.
Thank you. Yeah, no, exactly what you said. I mean, you need to have those conversations. So otherwise, the ups and downs are the downs are much down and much more down, and the ups obviously are great.
Yeah. Before we dive into AccelHUB, right, and everything you did, I have to ask you, you were nominated as one of the top 50 most daring entrepreneurs, not just any entrepreneur, most daring entrepreneur in the US by Entrepreneur Magazine. What? How did that happen?
So, that's a great thing. That's a great question. So right after the election, now we're talking about the Trump election, it was the most, it was a crazy time, right? So we're sitting I sit in my co-working space right after the election, and there was nobody there. It seemed like whole Cambridge had disappeared.
Yeah.
It was almost like like the whole country was in a state of shock. And interesting enough, we thought like we have to be able to do something, to either help people come back or get them together to start talking. And so we had hosted this event about the impact of the election to Latinx entrepreneurs in the U.S. And I must have hit a nerve because a lot of people came to the event and the space was packed. And also I was able to host, people that were usually, they're I would say hard to get or hard to get a hold of because they're super busy. And we had a fantastic event. We had a couple different people, members of the press, ask us questions, and it was just like a great conversation. It's such a needed conversation. Everybody came out and we had a great discussion. It was like hard topics, and everybody's like, we're nervous, we don't know what's going to happen. Everybody was freaking out, and I think that was I think the tipping point for us. Our space got very well known after that, and the people in the two reporters in the press were completely amazed that there was a space that where people feel comfortable talking about these things, but also we were promoting, or helping other Latino or minority entrepreneurs to succeed. So it was right after that, that things started kind of going very well for the space. We were full, our occupancy was, 100,
Yeah.
almost close to 100%. And, I started getting more interviews. I got nominated to, I was on the Boston Globe and Bostino. And I think that kind of snowballed. One day I got a call from Entrepreneur Magazine saying, "Hey, we read about what you're doing in Boston. We like what you're doing. Would you sit for the editor and let us know?" And yeah, that was it.
I love that. And it takes me back to 2001, when this is really what you wanted to do. You
Yeah.
wanted to be able to have a group, a community, connection, collaboration, conversation, and celebration during, and it's now, at that point in time, and for the remaining, anyway,
Yeah.
you have had that experience.
Yeah.
And are providing that safety net, that safe space for that level of communication and collaboration, and sometimes commiseration.
Yeah. 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 And
For
essentially what you're providing here, but in a physical space, and obviously at one point in time. But these things, spaces like yours, are very important for people to share knowledge. I always see it especially for Latinos that are born here, or Latinos in LATAM that don't have access maybe to top schools, or
Right.
are able to travel abroad, is just don't know what's out there if you can't. Nobody's sharing that with you. So sharing this information, it's almost like it's a basic human need. Being able to talk to another human being and tell them their point of view, sharing
Right.
what they know, it's basic, and it's really important.
Right, especially when you have that in common, where there is the common thread and the common lived experience. That is so important. So this is a perfect segue for diving into Excel. Thank you for this great question, Angela. Oliver, could you please talk a bit about AccelHUB? Do you only invest in companies outside the USA, or also Latinos in the USA?
So that's a great question, and we've struggled with this a long time because, from a financial point of view, our thesis is to invest in startups from out of the U.S. because their valuation is lower, and because our value add is connecting to networks here.
Yeah.
So that was always our kind of value proposition. But we quickly realized that Latinos here have a similar challenge. They're not connected to a network, and they also most of the time have a connection or an operation in their home country in Latin America. So to short answer that is, we consider both. Uh, Now we're considering both Latinos that are here and startups are in LATAM. What's important for us is that the market potential, that there is an impact in LATAM or to Latinos in the US. So those are two main I would say filters, but
Yeah,
we don't differentiate now.
right. Oh, that's awesome to know. Great. And we'll go back to AccelHUB itself, but since you're talking about AccelHUB Ventures, this came after you launched AccelHUB. Did you bring in other partners? How did you fund that platform?
Yeah, so with AccelHUB, I've had a couple partners, Greggy and Alex, who's actually on the call. But it was actually at the event where we met, Andy. That was our I think that was the final showcase that we had for this group of entrepreneurs from Mexico, and we got such a great positive feedback from this guy. So just to give you a recap, we were pitching to the Mexican government for years, having a longer program where we could bring these startups for a longer period. And finally, that year, they said, "You know what? Let's do it. Let's do a pilot." And we brought over a period of 6 weeks, eight companies. Actually, seven only ended up coming. Seven tech companies from Mexico, where we had them connect to mentors, technical mentors, attorneys, everywhere you could ever need to get your company launched here. And then on top of that, also obviously investors, potential investors, but also investors that would give them feedback. And we worked with some great partners there. And it was at that final event, right, where a couple people approached us and said, "I like this. These companies are great. It's like, I would invest in this company if you brought more." And we're like, "Really?" I'm like, why didn't you say that before? Like I've been telling you for a long time. But anyway, so we got like, both me and Greg, we got approached by probably like 20 people that after that event.
Nice.
And so we're like, you know what, there's something here. And what we now come to learn, there's a term for it, we call it diaspora investor, which is essentially an investor who has ties to Latin America or has some kind of root connection to Latin America. They want to invest in and help companies, but they don't necessarily want to put their money in a different country. And we understood that part from a fiscal and regulatory standpoint. It's a big risk to put your money in different countries where you don't know the tax code, and or any other regulatory environment. It's risky. So we're like, why don't we have already a process? That's our process. Bring them here, convert them to U.S. corporates, basically acclimate them to the U.S. ecosystem.
Yeah.
Why don't we start having a group of people invest in these companies instead of just waiting for other people to invest in them?
I love that.
AccelHUB Ventures was born.
So for your accelerator program, because that's basically what it was, you chose a group of founders from Mexico. How did you make the decision? I mean, what was your filtering process? Did you get a lot of applications, or did you search and find and invite? What was the process?
Yeah, in that program specifically, we partnered with Mass Challenge Mexico.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so Mass Challenge Mexico they had a bigger name in Mexico, so we thought they had a bigger reach in the application process. So they were able to, through Mass Challenge Mexico, we got over 100 applications.
Yeah.
And so then we had different criteria that we collaborate with them with the criteria we were looking for, because the criteria that they might be interested in Mass Challenge Mexico is not necessarily what might be interesting in Boston, right? So we kind of we did a little bit of work together to refine that, and out of those companies, we were able to pick some of the.
Wonderful. And for folks who don't know, Mass Challenge is I think it's the world's largest accelerator program, nonprofit. So it's free for the founders who apply and are accepted. So here in Boston, every year, there's a good 120 companies that enter the program, and they really support the founders with phenomenal resources and connection. And it's about 4 months long. And so they've branched out over the years. They were founded in 2010. And so they've branched out over the years to other countries. And so I think, again, it's that leveraging relationships, folks, to make your job easier. It's almost an Andy-licious moment, but not quite. It's just so important that we find these partnerships to make our lives easier. For Oliver and the AccelHUB team, now they've got a pool from which to choose. And so you put them through the process. And then how long did they stay here in the US? Was it a couple of weeks?
Yeah, they actually came here for 6 weeks.
Excellent.
So a long program. Yeah.
And did you bring in teachers and folks to help, up their founder game as well as make the introductions?
So yeah, we brought some of the people that we've worked with in the past. So I'll name some of them because I think some of them might be organizations that are helpful for some of the viewers. So Open Avenues Foundation it's a nonprofit that helps immigrant entrepreneurs with their H-1Bs and so forth. So the immigration component is a big component. It's a big risk for entrepreneurs coming from abroad. We work for obviously some attorney firms here, Full and Lardner, which helped us a lot. We worked with pretty much a variety of different service providers, but that's not it. We also wanted them to meet people in their field who can help create a bigger network. So I think that's the important part for somebody coming from abroad is they have no network or very limited network. So one of the key components for us that we think that makes us successful is adding to their network, and the network that can actually open doors to them. So that was kind of the goal of the program. And
go ahead.
One of the overarching themes was preparing them to actually raise capital. But we're upfront with them. Listen, we can't promise nobody can promise capital raising. Well, the only thing we can promise is that we're going to prepare you. We're going to fix your deck so that it reads well. People understand it here, and that after you go through the process, if nothing else, you have a very clear way of communicating what you're trying to do and what you're doing with the money if you try to raise money.
To me, it would be like winning the lottery. Seriously, I mean the whipped cream on the ice cream sundae would be, wow, we got funded and boom. But as a founder, to get that 6 weeks of support, introductions, help with visas, all of that, Oliver, what a difference you're making in their lives and really for the communities that if they do get funded in being able to scale in the US. Oh my gosh, the ripple effect back to their economy and their family. You must get up every day and be feeling like,
No, actually, I get feel every day freaking out because as an entrepreneur, you always have to figure out what's the next revenue opportunity, and obviously through Extrasense, who I'd love to talk a little bit about that
yeah, we're
too.
going to go right into Extrasense now. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Extrasense. So Extrasense, we're using AI to identify pests, and so it's more than just like Google Images. We're actually trying to identify pest species with using your camera. And the reason that came about is actually it was through AccelHUB. I got invited to go to Mexico, to the state of Sinaloa, and we're talking about to farmers about how hard it was for them to identify pests on time. For there's multiple reasons, and because of that, they lost a lot of the crop to this small pest. And so when I got back, we created a company. Initially, we were focused on doing it through drones and low flying drones on agriculture, but we pivoted to domestic and commercial residential pests, mainly because it's a smaller subset, and we feel we could tackle agriculture, which is a much bigger subset of bugs later. And we're fortunate enough to partner with LatinX last year, and we're doing a pilot with them. But it's been a ride, right? Not only driving revenue, trying to raise money, building a team, a technical team, delivering on a corporate client. Every day you kind of wake up and you're like, I think more than anything, I wake up like I have no idea what I need to do today. Like I have this list, and it all goes out the window at the end of the day. So.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I just want to bring this up for everybody to go to the website, check it out, see what they're up to at Extrasense. And, it's such an important technology, and you still had to figure it out. You had to find people to leverage and build relationships and partnerships with, and founders. That's another really great takeaway from our conversation with Oliver today is the leveraging partnerships to help you get your business, give it some runway, give it some lift, and increase its exposure by going in with a company that's huge like LatinX.
Yeah.
And
that's what I was gonna say, Andy. That's something I hadn't really thought about before. Right? You always hear like go with friends and family round, then go to angel round, go to seed round. And I think the corporate route is less explored for whatever reason. And when we found LatinX, it's non-dilutive funding. You have a great partner. It's helped us with now we're currently raising our seed round, and we're already halfway there, only after a couple of weeks. So it's helped us in a lot of ways. So it's I would say if you have a company or a business that's B2B, explore the partnership with a potential corporate. I mean, yes, be careful, but it could open a lot of doors.
Yeah, and remember, folks. Oh, all right. Now I'm feeling an Andy-licious moment coming on, so I'm just going to give you this little piece of advice. We so often, Oliver, you see this too, right? Where folks are all about the money they've raised. Oh, I've raised this many millions, that many millions. It really isn't about that, folks. It's really about how are you getting to profitability? How are you building relationships in order to bring in money and customers, et cetera? And there's, this happened during the dot-com world too. 20 million here, 50 million there. I mean, ridiculous. It really is. How are you doing not just on your revenue, but on your profit after that revenue is gone? That's the real barometer check on whether or not you have a healthy company. There you go. That's the Andy-licious moment, folks. So we have a great question here. What's your best advice for an entrepreneur with a very niche target market? Making investors, usually older white men, understand the product need. Oh, Alejandra, is that how I say her name? Oliver, but I got to tell you, it's the crux for so many folks, especially female founders.
Yeah. So I have two. I have one quick anecdote, and then I'll answer your question, Alejandra. One is that I remember I was helping an entrepreneur from Brazil pitch. I went to New York to pitch. And I'm used to the Boston Angels that are mostly men, mostly white, and there's a way to they let the process goes. But went to New York, and there was this angel group that was, to my surprise, I would say 99% women. Not that they're necessarily they need to win, but the people in that room were women. And the companies that were funded were companies that I didn't understand the process because I'm not a woman, and so, but it was a woman related product, and I hadn't seen those kind of companies get funded before in the different spaces where I've been. So I think it does make a huge difference who the investor is, because if they can relate to your product, they have relate to the challenge, they're more likely, obviously, to invest in you. If they can't relate to it, it's going to be hard. Now, I don't know much about your product and how niche it is, but you have to remember, as an investor, they need to make 10x or 100x return to cover all the other losses on the other investments they make. So think about it from an investor point of view. What's going to make them think that your product, your service in this niche product can cover potentially the losses of their 10 other investments? So that's what you always got to wonder with investors. It's not that it's a niche market, but even if it's a niche market, is it big enough? Is it big enough that if everything goes the right way with you, and you're successful, is it big enough to cover the losses for their other investments, right? So whatever your niche market is, I think you can. What strategy that I would do is, okay, I'm starting with this niche market, but then there's 2 or 3 adjacent markets that can be bigger. And once I conquer this, and I'm the best at this, I know we can tackle markets B and C.
Brilliant advice, because you first have to, prove your hypothesis, your value prop, get your feet in the ground and solid in your marketplace. But when you're telling the story initially, to talk about those different industries or pathways or distribution channels that you can bring your product or service into once you have established your brand, that makes the story very exciting. And of course, it's also the emotional connection with the investors has to be there too, And Alejandra, I have a great investor questions for investors. I'll throw in the link here, or reach out to me. I want to get it to you because it's really good, and it can help you answer some of those tough questions as well. Oh my gosh. So here we are. You've done all this great work. Clearly you are, dealing with what we call the founder journey challenge. And it's never easy. I don't care how long you've been in business, folks. This is always going to happen. You're going to be lying awake at night wondering, what do I do next to make this work? That's why you have to have an appetite, right, Oliver? Mm-hmm. So you've hinted at some of the times, like, oh my God, what am I going to do when I get up tomorrow? Share some of your best advice for founders who are struggling on this journey and think they're silly folks, the only ones who suffer as founders. It's not true.
It's not true at all. And this is why this kind of places is important, because, for example, what really helped me, I was really struggling with the co-working space at first. And, part of me, because, physical space is hard to scale and so forth. But I remember talking to a founder in our space who he's been very successful. He had raised over $5 million in their seed round. And, for you, any way you measure, you see he was a successful founder. And I asked him, like, what do you do? Like, how do you know that you're doing the right direction? You're making the right decisions? And he's like, you know what? After our seed round, I still freaked out. Every day I would lay awake. It didn't matter if we raised the money, we didn't raise the money, because the moment you raise the money, now how do you spend it correctly? How do you use your targets? It's like you're still always wondering if what you're doing is the right thing. And you guys got to remember, if you're doing something truly innovative, you are the first ones to do it. So there is no instructions. There is no clear delineated path. That's the beauty of it, and that's the hardship of it, is that you blazing the path, which means you have to wake up every night and think whatever you're doing is the right thing to do, and nobody else is going to be able to tell you, yes or no. And so that, once you're kind of comfortable with that part, it's like, okay, I'm doing it, nobody else is doing it. You can think that other people have done similar paths, and maybe in some parts they have, but everybody has a different story. Some people maybe have the right network. Some people just happen to be working on this product for 10 years and you just heard about it, right? So just because you see other people successful overnight, that's never the case, right? There's always some bigger story behind it. I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys have heard the story of Airbnb. I mean, the guys at first, they had they were selling like mattresses on like space in their mattresses, and that's where the Airbnb comes from. It was just, after they took off, yeah, everybody's like, oh, what a success story. They must have figured it out right away. No, they went through like Y Combinator and they couldn't get it right still. So everybody has a story. Just know that if you're struggling, everybody else is struggling as well.
I love that, Oliver. Thank you so much. How can we support you and your work in the world? Because we love to open doors and add wind to other founders' sails. What can we do?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say there are three things that are obviously interesting for me. One is if you're a technology founder, you're Latino, Latinx, and you're looking for seed rounds, obviously hit me up, add me on LinkedIn. We'd love to go through your deck and see if you're a good fit for the angel group. If you're an angel investor, or thinking about angel investing in Latino, Latinx startups and don't know how, join us. We have a group. We do this kind of sessions just like we do, and we kind of walk through deals and we explore what the best way to do it. And so we produce an investment memo, and you can read them. So you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to figure it out alone. That's what we're there for. And third, as I said, we're racing around with our tech company. We're in pest control, which is a very kind of niche industry, even though it's like a $20 billion industry. So if you guys have any potential partners, so you think it might be interesting, we're also fundraising, doing our seed round. So if there's investors that you might think might be a good fit for us, love an introduction as well.
There we go. There's Extrasense. And I put all the links into the comments, live comments. And there's AccelHUB. Refresh your memory there. And of course, Oliver has had his banner running across the bottom the entire time. And he really means it. Reach out to him. He's a wonderful person to connect with. And you can see why he is a treasure for all of us in the Boston startup community. Just so accessible and shares the real knowledge. I want to say a quick thank you. I don't know if you know who this is, but
yeah, Renzo. He's my good friend from school. Hey, Renzo.
That's so great. Thanks for tuning in. That's wonderful. And one more question from the crowd. Angela's asking, in your experience, what is the ideal stage for a new tech company to get pre-seed investment?
That's a good question. So it depends, and I know you hate that answer. It depends, but I will tell you specifically what I think it depends on. So if you're in something that's hard tech, I think a lot of people would consider you giving a pre-seed investment round if you have some demonstrated traction on your technology. So either proof points on clinical trials or proof points on that the technology works. If it's something hard technology, you don't have to have a lot of revenue if it's differentiated enough. At least that's my experience. If it's something that's a little more not common. Common is a bad word, but more along the lines of what's available in the market, then you probably need to demonstrate at least a product market fit, or at least I would say pre-seed maybe an MVP, that you have something that works. Maybe you have initial testers and you got good feedback. You have to show. Remember, from an investor perspective, you're always considering risk. So there's a people risk, there's a market risk, there's a product risk, in all kinds of risks. But those are the three main risks at the beginning. If you demonstrate me through either your curriculum, your experience, that the people risk is gone, right? So I believe in you. Then you have the product risk, where have you been able to create a product, form something that that works. That's gone. So that makes me more likely to invest. And then obviously the market risk, if you can prove that the product, someone is willing to pay you for that, then all my risk, all my concerns are gone, and I definitely want to give you money. Obviously, once you have product market fit, I think you're talking about Series A or big seed rounds. Pre-seed rounds, product and people risk are probably the main concerns.
Yeah. That's why you need the team slide practically right up front, everybody. Get rid of that white elephant in the room. Oliver, so grateful that you joined me on the show today. Viewers, so grateful you all tuned in. Oliver, I can't wait to see you again in person for a big hug. But until then, please know that, seeing you like this has just been such a treat. And I'm so grateful that you joined me on the Startup Life Show and shared your startup stories and your amazing advice for LATAM companies, for Latinx companies here, and for those of us who are on our founder journey and raising money, et cetera. So grateful. That's right, Angie. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you guys for joining us in the different platforms, and it's a pleasure. And like I said, we need this kind of spaces, and what you're doing is fantastic, Andy, and I hope you continue doing it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, folks, I mean, you can see, again, as I said, why he's beloved around here in Boston and now, all over the place. I am truly grateful you tuned in and carved out time to cheer on another founder, learn some stories, add to your knowledge base as a founder and your skill set. As a founder, if you have any questions for Oliver or me, pop them into the comments, email us. You saw Oliver shared his email address on the banner there. You can find us anywhere. We'd love to continue the conversation with you. Again, for those of you watching the replay, hey, thanks for making it this far. You rock. Please click that subscribe button. I'd be so grateful for that. And founders, this is something we talked a lot about, and I'm always bringing up, of course, because I am a coach to first-time founders. You do not need to be doing this journey alone. It is hard enough. So please reach out. You can see the ways that I help folks. I have pitch deck reviews, which are really, really helpful if you're raising capital. I've raised millions in VCs, thousands in angels, and I co-host a monthly pitch event. So it's my sweet spot. But I can do strategy sessions with you, on demand coaching, and certainly for you female founders, that WeBank application, reach out to me. Don't leave money on the table with that. And you can book a free 15-minute conversation with me right here, and we'll find out if we're a good fit. We can talk about how we could work together, but you're always going to come away with some Andy-licious advice from me. And I got to tell you, next on the Startup Live Show, this is on Tuesday, we have a Latina founder. She is from Brazil. She's in the US now for quite a few years, and she, as a serial tech founder, and wow, does she know how to do product dev. She's a seasoned product leader and 2 times tech startup founder. And she's passionate about product management, product design, and the transformations that occur at the intersection of art, business, people, and technology. Adriana is going to be a lot of fun. That's why you want to be here and you want to join this meetup group. That way, whenever I've posted a new show and who's coming up next, and you can get in. And of course, network. It is so important to use these live show opportunities to get to know each other, to meet a new founder. I mean, nothing else. You're going to be connecting with Oliver on LinkedIn, which will be huge and wonderful and a great connection for you to have. And so I, again, so happy that you tuned in. And please know I'm with you. I'm cheering you on. Stay focused. Okay. And remember, you've got this. You really do, no matter what happens. Thanks again for tuning in. Cheers, everyone. Mwahs.